This video series is not meant to be instructional. It is, however, an invitation to view my journey as I strive to build a log cabin on a budget. Working with sharp tools, felling trees, building log cabins, etc. is inherently dangerous work, which is why they should not be attempted without the proper training, safety precautions, and full knowledge of the associated risks. Enjoy. Sincerely, The Outsider. Welcome to the Log Cabin Project, where I'm building a log cabin on a budget. When I started work on my previous cabin, one of my first questions was, when is the best time to fell my trees? And as I talked with different people on the subject, I got two main answers. Some of them told me that the best time to drop a tree is in the winter, while others told me that the best time is in the spring. But it was my grandfather, who has been a farmer and logger all his life, who finally gave me a straight answer that I was happy with. He told me that a tree dropped in the wintertime will last longer. I suppose the reason for that is because a tree dropped during the cold months will dry out more slowly and steadily. Therefore, there's less of a chance that the log will dry out too quickly and begin to check or crack. But my grandfather also told me that although a log dropped in the winter will last longer, a tree felled in the spring will peel better. My guess is that a log peels better in the spring because during that time there's new growth on the tree, and this new growth leaves a soft, moist layer between the tree and its bark, making it very easy for the bark to be removed. But that's just a theory. But since it's already spring, I'm going to be putting that theory to the test. The tree of choice that I'll be working with is white cedar. And in talking with a couple of other farmers who worked with cedar before, they all told me one thing. If you drop your cedars on June the 1st, the bark can be peeled away in big sheets using only your bare hands. I wondered if they were exaggerating slightly, but June the 1st had almost arrived, and I was ready to start dropping trees. All I know is that I removed the bark from a white cedar before, but it was in late summer, and it took me over half a day to remove the bark from a 24-foot long section of log. Needless to say, it wasn't fun. So, the prospect of being able to debark a tree with significantly less effort was appealing to me. So, let's get started. On my way into the bush, I noticed something laying on the ground at an entrance into the tree line. When I bent down to take a closer look, I was delighted to discover that it was a deer antler. During the winter months, deer shed their antlers, and so it was a special treat for me to find one of them. This area is full of deer, and it's nice to see them moving about again, after going through such a long winter. The cedar forest that I'm working in is very dense, and with such a tight space for felling, I was concerned that it might be difficult to drop the trees I needed without getting them caught up. But when a forest becomes dense like this, it's good to selectively remove some of the trees anyway, so that the remaining trees can have some breathing room to grow. So, after carefully selecting the trees I wanted, it was time to drop the first tree for my log cabin.
Otherwise you may have cut out a bit more.
I immediately started to question how easy this cabin project was really going to be.
1, 2, 3.
After expending some time and energy, my dad and I were able to shake the tree loose.
Go. Go. Just keep it rhythm going. Let off. Oh, thank goodness. Alright. So I was holding her up at the inside now.
And finally, down it came. I hoped this tree was an anomaly, and that maybe the rest of the trees wouldn't fall without any more issues. But I was mistaken. All the other trees I cut down that day, save one, got hung up. But it was very satisfying to see the one fall all the way to the ground after the first cut.
One, two. Let's keep it rolling, I guess.
There has to be a better way, I thought to myself. But I couldn't think too much about it at the moment because trees needed to be limbed and cut to length, 23 feet in length to be precise. That's because so far I would like the dimensions of my log cabin to be 20 feet by 15 feet. And to make sure that we use the whole tree, we've been saving the tops, which will eventually be used as fence posts. Now that the trees are limbed and cut to length, it's important that we debark the logs right away. That's because freshly fallen trees in the spring are the easiest to debark. If the logs are left to sit too long, the bark will only be harder to peel, and you don't want that. In addition, a tree left to sit with its bark on is an invitation for bugs and rot. Several farmers told me that the best time to peel cedar is on June the 1st. They told me if you peel it on June 1st, it'll come off in big sheets. Well, I didn't have the time to drop all my trees on June 1st, but I could at least try to drop most of them within the month of June. I was still doubtful if it was going to be as easy to debark the cedars in the spring as the farmers were telling me, but it was worth a shot. And so came the moment of truth. It was time to attempt the debarking of my first spring log. It actually went surprisingly well.
bad.
The debarking went well for the first 10 feet, I should say. After that, it started getting harder to remove. The higher I went on the log, the more the bark seemed to be glued to the tree. And if I was able to remove the outer layer of bark, it was even harder to remove the inner cambium layer. Things were not shaping up as expected. The trees weren't falling the way I wanted them to, and now they weren't peeling very well either. I started to wonder if I'd bitten off more than I could chew. I noticed that wherever the bark peeled the best, there was an abundance of slippery sap underneath, which seemed to loosen the bark from the tree. And higher up on the tree, where it was harder to peel, it seemed much drier. So I figured that the top half of the tree didn't peel as good because the springtime sap hadn't yet reached that part of the tree. Anyway, I was technically a week early, according to what all the farmers were telling me. However, the next tree I worked on was much easier to peel, but I noticed that the sap had spread to the top of this one, which explained why it was easier to debark. At least that's my explanation for it. After only peeling the 2 logs, I decided to call it a day, and come back a week later. I figured this might allow enough time for the sap in all the cedars to reach the tops of the trees, therefore aiding in the debarking process. So, after taking the advice of the old farmers, I returned on June the 1st to try and peel some more cedars. And as I was walking back into the bush, I spotted 3 wild turkeys grazing in a field.
Can you see how many are there? 3.
I was in the shadows, so they hadn't spotted me yet. But as soon as I stepped out into the clearing, they took off like a flash. Turkeys sure can run when they want to. Since I am choosing to selectively log the cedars, I don't want to cut the surrounding trees down. So although clear cutting is a faster way to get the logs I wanted, it was out of the question for me. When I'm done harvesting my logs, I want the forest to be healthier because of my presence, not worse off. Anyway, my friend and I decided to use a lever and fulcrum system to slide the butt of the tree backwards until it was free enough to fall.
Okay. Oh, nice. Alright, it's almost. I wonder if I can pull it now. Alright, let's give that a try.
Once we leveraged the tree out of the ground and got it on top of the mound, we wrapped some rope around the base and we pulled it out from underneath itself.
Ready? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
I was impressed with how effective the lever was in shifting the tree's weight. But after going to all that work of bringing this tree down, I discovered that it couldn't be used anyway. That's because it showed signs of rotting from the inside out. I cut the log higher up to see if the rot had spread up the tree, and unfortunately it had, so this log is unusable. But regardless, I was still happy with the effectiveness of the lever. This will no doubt be of great use to me as I continue to fell cedars in such a dense forest. Still, I wondered if there might be a better way. As we continued to work away, my friend just about stepped on this little guy, a ruffed grouse. Since we had been working in that very spot for the last 20 minutes, the grouse was probably sitting there completely camouflaged the entire time without us noticing him. It wasn't until my friend nearly stepped on him that he had to break his cover. After limbing up the freshly fallen trees and cutting them to length, I wanted to see if the trees were ready for debarking.
So, if you let this dry then, it wouldn't come off quite so easily, and then you'd have bugs in there as well, eh?
Yeah, exactly.
All I can say is, the debarking went amazingly. It actually did come off in sheets, just like my farmer friends had said it would. I couldn't believe how easy it was. In my previous experience, when I debarked a cedar log in late summer, it took me the better part of a day to do so. But now, on June the 1st, without any special tools, and without rushing, my friend and I debarked a 23-foot log in 5 minutes flat. This was a turning point for me. Although I'm sure there will be many more challenges waiting me during the construction of this log cabin, I feel that I've gotten over the first major hurdle. Now that I've got a handle on things, I can't wait to see what I'm going to accomplish this summer. Stay tuned for more episodes. I'm the Outsider, saying, until next time.
There, I think.
I had a couple of friends who backpack, and the fifth top country for views is Germany. And I had a couple of friends who backpack, and the fifth top Can you wave your hand, Jeff? So hard to see when. Oh, there we go. Okay.